All right, we've got one to go. Is that right? This is the last one. Thank the Lord. Righto, so here's my other sheet. Come up, my panel. You know who you are. It is Caroline Oates from YouTube, Google YouTube, Michael Stephenson from Nine. They're up there. There we go. Mark Frain, Natalie, and me. And you're not coming, Justin. If I've got a mic'd up crew here, righto. Now this is, we're going to spend a couple of minutes, 5 minutes perhaps, from the panel here talking to what the CMOs said. That was pretty safe actually. There was some good smart stuff, but nothing that's sort of going to freak anyone out, I don't think, unfortunately for me. But we will, I think maybe one of the things that we've heard about today all over is lots and lots of measurement and what's going on there. But I think the first thing from the CMO panel I'll get you each to respond to is essentially this upper funnel, lower funnel challenge. And Caroline, guess what? You get to go first because John talked about less search and more, building demand, creating demand. Obviously, YouTube, he mentioned that. Your take on your first impressions, basically, on what the CMOs are wanting and doing, looking for.
I think in terms of I guess it's balancing that long and that short. And I think that, we've obviously all seen, Bennett and Fields have been very clear in terms of the balance for different brands in terms of your brand building versus performance. I think depending on where any businesses are, I think getting that balance right is really important. I think that what's really interesting is I think traditionally we've always had, there's certain channels that will do the long, there's certain channels that will do the short. Right. And I think increasingly, we're seeing that, CTV we talked about earlier today, I think increasingly that's got an opportunity to do more across both. I think the challenge, and spoken about in the last panel, is how do you link that back? So how do you really truly understand this is what I do at the top, and that's the impact it has at the bottom in any given time frame? And I think that's really hard. I think we've got some clients who are making progress on that, and I think it is an interesting one. But the top of the funnel, we talk around long-term brand building. That's multi-year effects that's having. And I think any business, even when you look at your econometrics, et cetera, often it's looking at last 3 years. So I think it is really challenging, but I do think that getting that balance right and also thinking about what objective you're trying to drive with any specific creative is really important. So
do you have a sense at YouTube at least on what proportion of campaigns, now we hear lots about how digital can build brand, it's increasingly, happening. Have you a sense on a proportion of what would be brand versus performance on YouTube on a split? Have you got those sort of ratios?
No, not exactly. Not exactly as you want it. I think that predominantly, I'd say YouTube has gone on a journey over the last however many years where even if you think what YouTube was being used for 5 or 6 years ago versus what it's being used for today with things like its CTV viewership, which is up at a third of our total watch time now, that's changed in terms of what we are seeing briefs for, and I think we'll continue to see that.
Steve-O, can I ask you about John's point where he said basically the feedback loops on linear are just too long to be to move fast enough and iterate. Your take on that, can it change, or is it changing? Does it need to change? John obviously thinks it does.
Yeah. No, well, first of all, you've heard today many times, I think, that total television is able to do a job for all brands and marketers from the very top of the funnel through awareness, through consideration and conversion. So the first thing is, there is no doubt that total television is unrivaled when it comes to being a full funnel marketing powerhouse, I would say. In terms of speed to market, we can react very, very quickly. So when John was talking...
linear reporting though, right, we're talking about? Linear reporting on linear audiences take too long for him to make decisions to iterate.
Yeah, I don't think that's true. So I can tell you tomorrow morning what our shows did tonight, and I can talk to him about the impact that of course television had to him. We invest heavily in effectiveness and delivering proof points for advertisers who want to test and learn, like John was suggesting. My challenge is that John was thinking about doing that with Netflix, which I wouldn't suggest would be a good use of his money at this point.
That's strange. Steve-O, why would you say that?
Because it's not niche. Premium is not niche, it's just little. Right. And so I wouldn't be using that as a platform just yet. But and I would disagree that the turnaround times on linear are too long. We can be very agile and nimble and quick.
Okay. Frain, your take on some of the stuff that came out of the marketer panel, where their business drivers sometimes are a little bit different to media. They need media, but sometimes the language is different. What your overall take?
I mean, I think I take a number of things out of that. Certainly the move towards digital metrics. Screens was kind of brought up from a digital sense, and to the question you just fired at Steve-O. I mean, I think our game is moving our kind of live linear TV inventory to digital as fast as possible. And then we can actually answer John's question, not the next morning, in the next kind of few seconds, in terms of what's impacting their business. So I think that's where we've got to get to, is get to that shift as fast as possible.
But when you say moving live linear to digital, that's just simply in the migration of audiences from linear to digital, or are you talking about migrating your linear audience reporting?
It's twofold. The migration of audience is happening kind of organically. We're not going to, I think we're influencing that on the products that we're building, but it's secondly about making a bet on how we move away from old metrics on television to new metrics that are being applied to streaming TV. And that's in our control to do that. We've got to take that leap to get there.
What's your plans?
Feels like an upfront. I mean, we're in a fortunate position that on the live linear side of our business, we've got set-top boxes, and we've got over 1 million set-top boxes. So we are embarking on a journey to look at how do we extrapolate those audiences to impressions. So go back to what Mark Code said an hour ago on stage. He'd love to see everything come towards the digital inside, so he's got a common currency. So we're going to explore that as a business. We've got that luxury of having a set-top box asset with IP return path data. So
that's a big play. We might revisit that one, because that holds some interesting.
I need to save something for November, so don't.
Oh, okay, right. So give you some new news, righto. Don't ask everything, Paul. Right. Let's go to the sort of the topic du jour for both broadcasters anyway, which is linear TV. Steve-O, you get to answer this because you just do. When is the tipping point? So we've heard lots about the linear. We've heard 5 to 10 years. Are you thinking 3 to 5? What's the tipping point on linear audiences moving into digital, and what are you planning for?
Yeah, well, I mean, you've mentioned a couple of times today that linear television is dead. Let me assure you that linear television is far from dead.
I said it once, Steve-O, and I'm retracted.
Well, in actual fact, it's more alive than ever. Of course, it's just being delivered via the internet. And, Liana made this point earlier on, I think a few people have, is that increasingly, the strength and power of Nine now is not being driven by on-demand and catch-up, it's being driven by the live stream. So it's me getting home every night and watching Nine's News at 6 p.m, at 6 p.m, like the way I always have on that big television in my home.
It's a very big TV as well, mate, in your home.
Yes, it's a size 9 screen.
These things haven't changed. I think that's really, really important. It's the combination, and that's why the power of total television, that combination of live terrestrial television with live streaming and on-demand in combination, is the power couple. We've proven time and time again that delivers better outcomes for brands. When you think about that transition or the tipping point, at some point, way back when, we had terrestrial television in isolation. At some point in the future, we'll have streaming only. There's absolutely no doubt about that. When that is, I don't know. And between then and there, we have total television. And that is the vehicle that will get us from one to the other. You think about some of the more recent examples around audience consumption. Most recently, Married at First Sight, 2 million people across total television watching that every single night. 600 to 700,000 of those were consuming it via the internet, via the live stream, in a linear sense. So that proves to me that linear television is far from dead. In actual fact, it's more exciting than ever. Because the things that you can do with those 600,000 or 700,000 people, of course, is much different to what you do in a traditional terrestrial sense. We can target them, we can personalise their experience, we can create new advertising experiences for them, which makes it more powerful.
Yeah, which means it's really, if you're talking like that, it's actually in your interest to actually see linear go faster. What about for you, Mark? Tipping point.
And I respect where we're all on different points of this journey to streaming television. And what we're trying to do, take the numbers that Steve-O's talking about in terms of 2 million, we want to take that 2 million in terms of an average audience and turn it into impressions. And I think we've got the ability to do that as a business. And there's no doubt 9, 7, 10, SBS, everyone will get there eventually. It will be a little bit behind what we're doing. And that's not an arrogant statement, it's just based on we're a business now that's got customers, 70% of which are streaming.
And marketers don't want us all to go at the same speed either, because whilst Frain might be going in one direction at a certain speed, marketers need mass reach. And so that's what we'll do in combination with other platforms, other digital platforms, with Foxtel, with
All right, so
YouTube.
let's assume that the linear stuff's happening. I'm not going to get anything out of you on a time frame. I think you're thinking 5 years. That's what I think. So I'm just going to say that, and you can say no, you're wrong. Tell me I'm wrong, Steve-O. Are you thinking 5 years for the tipping point?
Well, use Married at First Sight as an example. It's 33% of the audience was consuming via a connected device. The NRL most recently launched 25% of the audience is coming through 9 now. So I suspect within 5 years, streaming and on-demand product in 9 now will be, probably 50 to 60% of the size of what 9 is.
Thank you. So that was actually exactly what I was looking for. So thanks, Steve. Natalie, what's the opportunity now for something like a Vevo, where your growth actually in the US, I think globally, is all coming out of linear, ironically, right? So talk to us about what's going on there, because that's kind of like counterintuitive.
Yeah, it's coming out of the fast channel landscape. We've got over 150 fast channels across 30 platforms globally, and the growth is here as well. In Australia, we have 5 fast channels on Samsung TV Plus. For us, it's about ubiquitous distribution, right? To get that reach and scale and the low frequency so that our advertisers can reach the audiences that they're trying to do, which I think is what we're talking about here, right? Whether someone's in the linear or they're in the digital side, they're all trying to reach the audiences that are out there, and they're trying to make sure that they can reach every niche audience. And for us, that's through those fast channels that we have, which are genre channels or decades channels that sort of meet different audiences that allow us to have the flexibility and the customization for advertisers to then target how they want to reach their consumers.
But what I'm trying to understand is whilst linear audiences are on the decline globally, you're feeding linear channels and you're growing. Is that simply just a distribution play? That's why it's working for you?
Right, distribution, but television is not, the TV screen is not going to go away, I think, right? Whether it's linear or it's digital linear with the fast channels, right? The television screen's not going away. It is a premium screen. It allows for great connection between the user and the content and the advertising. And I think that's not going away. There's growth there still.
And linear audiences aren't getting smaller. You just said it again.
I just said it again. They're not getting
terrestrial audiences that are being delivered via an antenna, will fragment and get smaller.
Okay.
But linear, live streaming is not getting smaller.
Okay, so yes, we've got to get the language right. I got told off this morning. I'm getting told off this afternoon. So I can't say that. Caroline, what's the opportunity for you as this wash up from terrestrial audiences?
I was just going to say, I think we joke about the language and we laugh about it, but I think it's really important. Like, we sat here today and we've talked around TV, and we're at a TV event, and I think I've heard it used to refer to several different things over the course of today. Is it broadcast content? Is it the screen that you're watching on? And I just think that, we kind of gloss over the language, but we're actually talking different languages and using the same terms to mean very different things. And I think it's really important that we do get a common understanding of that. Because I sit here and I don't understand how we can talk around total TV in the Aussie market, not inclusive of YouTube, which is, we saw earlier in terms of the streaming on TV of YouTube content. So, and I know that's my perspective, it comes very differently to yours, but I think that's a real challenge in our industry. I think for us to be talking, whether it is total TV, whether it's a screen, I think I don't think we've got a common understanding or a common vernacular that we're using to refer to this stuff, and it's making all of our lives harder.
I'm fine with that. At the end of the day...
You're fine with which bit?
Well, getting some common metrics. Our goal, we keep talking about almost these two worlds of TV. You got $3 billion traded this way, and then you've got $2 or $3 billion worth of online video in another pillar. Our goal is to make a leap into that digital pillar, which is exactly where all of your inventory and business is. We get there, we've got a lot of similar metrics. You've got an old world of television with older metrics. You've got a new world of television with new metrics that are sitting in this pillar. And you can argue total TV is all of it, but to your point, there's a lot of different metrics between those two worlds. So the faster, in our view, we get to that side, the better for our customers and our agencies. That's our view.
So, you want to be more like Caroline then, is what you're saying?
Not quite like Caroline.
No.
Not exactly.
Significantly higher CPMs and more premium content, but with some of that capability.
Hey, I'll take the scale. I'll take the scale.
Yes.
Nice.
So let me ask you this though. Then, if we heard this morning in the breakfast session, YouTube, would you want to jump into the OzTam currency system into VOZ? Would you want to do that, and vice versa? Would you have? So we talk about this need for common language. How do we get there?
I think it's a really interesting question. I think it was one that was asked last year of a panel that I think someone from Google was at, and Doug was up here as well.
So
My view on that is
wasn't an original
changing.
question then,
Well,
Caroline.
it's definitely not original, but it
No,
goes to show
thanks.
our industry we're having some of the same conversations, right? A few years back, I'd probably have said, yeah, sure. I think now, do we need some sort of cross-media measurement? I think we do. I think we need that common language. I think we need to stop new silos kind of springing up as the market develops. Is the answer to that OzTam as it currently stands? I think I'm less sure. And I'm less sure both from a definitions perspective, but even, last year I think Doug was talking even technically, like, could we just incorporate YouTube into OzTam with the volume of data? Probably not. So I don't think it's as simplistic as would we want to just be a part of that, but I think, do we want to be part of an industry solution around cross-media? Yes. Do we think we need to think through what are the principles we need to define that makes it fit for the future that Frain is talking about? Like, this isn't about building for yesterday.
We're not going to. So, great point on the cross-media. Like, we know that in the US and the UK, there's big cross-media programs, cross-media measurement programs happening, funded by advertisers. And we have the tech platforms in, and we have the broadcasters out. So in that instance, it's actually the broadcasters are not playing unless there's an update that you guys know about on the cross-media. Do you know what I'm talking about with that project?
There isn't really an update from our side, no.
No, okay. So my question is how do we get to that middle ground where YouTube and Google will give, these guys will give, and I'll ask Natalie in a point because she's on both sides. She's seen sort of it from another perspective. But how do we get to that contract?
I think there's steps that are being taken to that. I think if you look at the Ipsos that's launching with later this year, hopefully it's not another VOZ story, but hopefully later this year, we'll have OzTam data incorporated in there alongside, for example, YouTube data. And I think that's a step that I think if you said to us a year or two ago, we'll be looking at that, I think would have been like, oh, no chance. So I think for us to just be like, this isn't a problem that we can even look at, I think we've got to. But I think we can make progress. And I think some of it is real progress. Even the fact that we are having this conversation with this group of people up here, that is progress on where we were at 3-4 years ago.
I think it's the first time we've all been on stage together from different platforms. Usually it's 4 television networks, so we've come a long way.
That's a sign of how far the industry has come.
Natalie, you got a view on all this in terms of the measurement and how, your thoughts?
Yeah, from my side, I think we need some commonality in measurement metrics, but I think coming from a content provider who has ubiquitous distribution across multiple platforms, that commonality needs to come with sharing. Like, there's quite the bit of the walled garden at the moment with CCPA and GDPR, where not all of the measurement attributes that are needed are going to be shared across the board, and I think that's where the commonality needs to happen, right? There needs to be an agreement that the IDs that content providers like us need will be shared equally in order to be successful in that. And until we do that, I think it's going to be very hard.
Well, we did hear that example in the US of the ID, 5 networks, now whether that can work for...
I think, as Rada said, if we end up with one currency, we probably would have done a lot better than the rest of the world. And if we can do that, kind of wonderful. Certainly from our side, we'll lean in and make measurement as best we possibly can. And whether that's us working with Doug and going, we've got 1 million set-top boxes, should we lend those to you to improve TV measurement in Australia? Let's have that kind of conversation. But that's not the only conversation. I think there's been a couple of points of you cannot do it in isolation. Multiple people have got to come together, but it is hard and it will take time. All jokes aside on the VOZ front, that's taken a long time. Vevo announced that a few years ago on this stage because it's hard work, bloody hard work. No one else has cracked it globally.
Stevo, how do you and Caroline join arms for measurement, that is, at least?
Yeah, I think to Frain's point, OzTam's not a secret club It's not a closed shop that no one else can come and join. I think
It's kind of been a bit like that for a while, though, hasn't it?
It has never. But it never has been. But the fundamental principles have always existed though, right? Which was anyone can come and be a part of OzTam so that we've got a consistency of currency. You just need to be measured the same way that everybody else in OzTam is. And if you can do that, then there's no problems. Now, up until this point, with all due respect to Google, they said no to that. Now, that might change in the future, and if it does, that would be amazing. Because I don't think there's a single person in this room that thinks having multiple currencies or multiple ways of measuring things is smart. And at the same time, you know, and I stand here and defend the work that we've done around VOZ, because there's two ways to look at that. One is you can stand there and throw pebbles from the outside and say it's 2 years late and it's not this and it's not that and it's not the other. Flip side is you can go, do you know what, in Australia, on May the 1st, when that goes into daily production into all of the agency systems, those that are ready, and those some will come on board over time. And next year on January the 1st, there or thereabouts, when it becomes the currency, we will be one of the first markets in the world that has created a cross-platform measurement system that is gold standard, third-party verified, and is used by the entire industry. And that is amazing. And I reckon people should be proud of that. And as a part of that, you're able to measure the combination of terrestrial viewing, live streaming, and on-demand viewing from a total television perspective. Allow you to measure the incremental reach that 9 Now adds to 10 Play or 7 Plus, that BVOD adds to linear, measure co-viewing, all of these amazing things that come with that. And anybody else in the room that is prepared to be measured via OzTam can be a part of it. So I would love to stand here in 12 months' time and see more than the current or existing shareholders and contributors being in it.
Okay, so to Caroline's point, though, it doesn't include YouTube. And Caroline, what's your reluctance for the OzTam VOZ methodology that says, no, we don't want to go there or we don't want to play? What is it about that? What's the resistance?
I think one of them is from a privacy perspective and using an SDK on the site. I think that's an area that's of concern for YouTube, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. So I think that's a privacy, that's in terms of what we'll prioritise, privacy comes first, and that's a kind of a point of view from a platform perspective, and that's not going to change. So I think when we think around an industry coming together, I think this isn't around how do we get in on OzTam and does it have to keep working exactly the way it's always worked. It's how do we make sure there is a measurement that is fit for the future and fit for the way consumers are now consuming, which isn't necessarily saying, okay, what's been the gold standard, which has absolutely been the gold standard for however many years. Like, what's going to be the gold standard that's going to be reflective of how consumers are viewing and the players that are in the marketplace?
Yeah, I think that's that key point about SDKs going into global players. It's not going to happen because the global players are so concerned on UX and quality of performance. That's going to be the big barrier to make that happen. So to your point, if we get there, we'll probably have to be a bit lenient on either side to change it moving forward because it won't work. We've gone through the experience on KO to be measured by VPM to have the opportunity to go into VOZ and kind of challenges on both sides, but it's taken us a couple of years. That's how long. That's one local platform. There's going to be 10 or 15 more to come. We will be here in 15 years, and we'll never have them all. So we've probably got to come up with a different way to do that moving forward.
So if the US broadcasters can share a shared ID in the US in terms of across all networks, which we heard here from CBS and earlier from James, I think, in Trade Desk, if the US broadcasters can do that, does that mean it's not? Is it possible here?
Well, I'm talking more from on the model at the moment where you've got to ingest an SDK into your own kind of player.
Yes.
That's not going to happen with a Netflix or Disney Plus or any of those big players.
Or
sharing IDs would be a different model that we could look at.
Right. And would that work for you, Caroline?
I think devil's in the detail. I think I couldn't answer that sitting here right now.
Right. Fair enough. Okay.
Good chat, though.
Yeah. Look, we're making progress. So the next question is, Mark Frain, do you genuinely believe that there will remain a single currency in this market, i.e. OzTam and VOZ, or will there be some fracturing like we're seeing in the US of different currencies? Will different players do different things?
I think there will be a bit of fracturing inevitably. Do they survive and become a currency in their own right? To be confirmed. I think the industry is moving at such a fast pace in we often get kind of caught up with currency and metrics. Kind of talk about Karen Nelson Field's work and attention curves and attention metrics. They have to make it into all of our business models and all of our planning tools. Does that become a currency? Probably not, but it certainly needs to become a metric that we all talk about a lot more collectively.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think there'll be a bit of fracturing.
Natalie, do you have a sort of a peace pipe here that we can work through on measurement? Do you have any thoughts on what might bring everyone? I'd love to see it. I mean, like it's really, it's important, but I don't think it's going to happen. I can't see it happening.
That's a good question. From my perspective, I think we're going to be in a world of multi-currencies, but I think, to point around the metrics, it's going to depend on what advertisers are looking for and how they're measuring and what their needs are and what vendors they choose to use to measure that. And unfortunately, as a publisher, I think we're going to be in a place where we're going to have to work with those vendors and have to live in that space rather than having one currency that is kind of traded across the board. I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all.
I mean, that's the biggest point is, number one, the clients and agencies they're gonna tell us where to go. And because of, and this is a global piece, because of the weight for various kind of cross-measurement kind of currencies, the never-ending kind of weight, clients are going, do you know what? Anything is better than nothing. So I'll trade it that way on your data. And that's why there's fracturing. So inevitably there's going to be fracturing because some clients are going, do you know what? I'll trade on those million set-top boxes. Let's do it tomorrow. Like, that's the reality.
To supplement the currency, that makes complete sense. And we should do more and more of that. But I think, having recently been in New York and speaking to a heap of people, I don't think there's a single person that I've spoke to that said in this market, which is relatively structured, relatively simple, that we should have multiple currencies. It would create complete chaos for everybody. It would create more hard work than we've ever seen before. So having a single currency that can be supplemented with additional data sources and data sets.
But isn't that the case in the US? Isn't that the case that Nielsen's sort of, people are moving beyond Nielsen for that it's the opposite of what you're saying.
Completely, and I reckon if they had their time again, they would unravel that like at a rapid rate. They don't want that as an outcome. It's just the way it's evolved. We have the opportunity here for that not to be the case. Yeah.
But I think it evolved because clients got the shits waiting.
100%. I completely get that. But we're in a position right now where on the 1st of May we will have a solution, or at least the beginning of one, and we have the opportunity for it not to happen in this market, and we can deliver against client expectation, against agency expectation, with a consistency across the entire industry, and I think that's incredibly powerful.
Caroline, is there somewhere in the world you've seen something that gets close to where you go, yeah, we could do that? We could hang out with these broadcaster people?
Mexico, maybe?
I think if I think about our relationships with like JICs globally, there's a bunch where we do have access, we license the data off them and we use it. That's something we've never been able to get agreement to locally to be able to get. And I think that does start to get to that world of kind of being able to bring data together, but like definitely not where we need to be. I think that the Origin stuff in the UK like showed early promise, and I think in terms of...
But that's falling down now from the broadcasters,
falling down at the moment. I mean, I feel like these are multi-year conversations, right? So right now, falling down. Who's going to pay for it? I think becomes a major pain point. But I think that's one where it started off really interesting from, okay, what's some fundamental principles that we need to align behind, and got to a certain point before it fell down. Okay. But I don't think anyone's cracked this. I don't think we're sitting here saying we're a million.
Well, I just think that Origin thing of what I know about it and talking to the World Federation of Advertisers who are sort of driving it centrally, I think it's like they're talking about synthetic audiences, and that's like mind-bending stuff when you start building synthetic audiences out of a panel and that represents individuals in a market. I mean, that's crazy stuff, but that's kind of my naive way of saying that's heavy shit. So let's get to, we'll get off measurement. Clearly, I don't think we're not going to get a kumbaya moment here on stage today. Sorry, Pete, but that's not going to happen. But can we just go to another fancy theme today, which is ad loads. So we've got bosses across the board here. So let's start with Caroline. I've been busting to ask this of your crew for a long time. Here we go.
Hit me.
So, just 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, YouTube were absolutely the flag bearers for user experience, right? So we're not going to mess with user experience. Now what we see is your ad loads on YouTube are rising. Now when I talk to, and I don't think Lucy said it today, but when you talk to the buyers, they're saying they're having conversations around YouTube about your ad loads as well at the moment. They've been increasing. Are they increasing?
Ad loads are dynamic. We don't have a set. We don't have a set. It's X amount of minutes per hour or whatever it might be. I think to your point around it was the best for user UX. YouTube has always been around balancing the interests of users, the audience, the creators, and the advertisers. And it's something in terms of ad load, we continue to experiment with it, like to get that right balance across those. I think that. So you're not going to get an answer in terms of have they increased, have they not? But I think that the broader thing is...
because you don't know or you don't want to say?
Genuinely, it's because there are so many signals that go into it. So any one person's ad load isn't the same as the person sitting next to them. And it depends on the context that you're in. And it depends on the format. So is it a skippable format? Is it a bumper ad? Is it a 30-second non-skip? All of those things, I think, lead into the UX. So I think when we talk about the user experience, it's not just about ad load. It's about all those other pieces. If I think about YouTube, one of the big shifts in terms of how we think even about our platforms has been CTV and the rise over the last 3 to 4 years. What a consumer or an end viewer will tolerate or be willing to tolerate when they're sitting back and they're watching a much longer piece of content than they are doing a quick snack of a shorts on their mobile is vastly different. So I don't think for us as a platform, it's not one size fits all on, every viewer engaging in every context is going to get the same sort of ad load. And we will continue to experiment and play with that to try and get that right balance across those three groups.
Okay, so in contrast, Mike Frain, you've got binge, and you are a capping thing. What's your numbers?
Yeah, we heard Bridget earlier, capping at 4 minutes, frequency cap kind of 1 per hour, 3 per day, and that's to all customers in the basic tier.
Okay, and so how does that play out? If you're going to go digital and online with ultimately all your content, that means that you're going to see that absolutely 4 minutes an hour is essentially the new load.
We'll hold there. I mean, we've got quantum growth coming on both KO and Binge as a platform, and therefore that's the revenue growth opportunity. There's no point increasing the ad load to affect the customer experience and the advertising experience, because going back to the conversation of attention that's been well used today, we're seeing in one world of television, lower ad loads on traditional pay TV channels delivers higher attention, and low ad loads in the digital ecosystem also delivers higher attention. So attention's becoming a thing, and we're going to lead in it. So we'll hold the ad loads. So
what does that mean for BVOD, Sivo, where you are still on terrestrial numbers? You're sort of running at 13 minutes an hour, or thereabouts. So any change? Do you see there's some challenges for the classic 13 minutes an hour, at least when you've got movement at YouTube and movement on some of the streamers?
So we've got obviously 13 minutes per hour in the live stream because it's a replica of the stream, of course. Then within our on-demand platform, we're currently running about 8 minutes per hour. We have the capacity to run 8 minutes. That's where we're set. We're currently generating somewhere between 5 and 6 minutes per hour. So I think that user experience kind of feels okay. Of course, our business is different to Frain's because he's both charges people for a subscription and also sells advertising, whereas we just sell advertising. So we can reduce the ad load to whatever anybody wants, because I think we all would respect and accept that lower ad loads, less clutter, more effective. I think we all subscribe to that.
No one will want to pay.
Pardon?
No one will want to pay.
But there's the economics of it, that's right. So we're an ad-funded, free business across all of our platforms. And so if clients or advertisers or agencies were willing to pay for that increased effectiveness, then there's no problem at all. But we can't, of course, do that without that trade-off. We have the economics. We've got to buy rights for sport, rights for content. We've got to run news services. We do all of those things, and they cost money.
Natalie, is there any data out of the US that's showing? So what's your take on ad loads? Because you're across a lot of different platforms.
Yeah, so for us, we average about 6 to 8 minutes ad load per hour across our fast channels as well as our on-demand app. And I think for us, with our content, we test that dynamic quite a bit, making sure that the user experience is at the right level for the music video content that we're curating and producing and programming. So for us, we're finding that sweet spot is the 6 to 8 minutes, but we're constantly looking at that from, again, user experience, time spent, retention, and then as well as like opportunity, ad opportunity, and market.
Okay, so final questions of each, and then we're out of here to the bar. Mark Frain, can terrestrial television have a business model if they, with a forced lower ad load? I mean, basically what Steve-O's saying is, can't move unless the market wants to buy it. The market won't buy it because then it's a vicious circle that we can't get a better user experience as mine.
I mean, hard for me to comment on Steve-O's commercial model, but
I'd love it.
you would love me to, I'm sure. What we're seeing is new metrics that are allowing us to charge a higher CPM for that experience. So if those metrics can make their way into terrestrial television, then that might be an opportunity to do it.
Okay, Caroline, final question for you. Yes, you take a note. So Caroline, I got 4 minutes out of Mark. We've got 8 to 13 minutes out of Natalie. Why can't YouTube tell us what your ad load model is? I just don't understand. I'm keen to understand it.
Because there is no set, we do this many minutes per hour, because it's about getting the right ad to the right person at the right time, and that varies depending on user context, content. Like I think they were talking there on some of the factors that will go into what makes the right ad. Like we don't want people to leave the platform. Like we are watching that, monitoring that, and I think adapting, and that's something that I don't think will change. Okay, we are out of time. It's beer o'clock, correct, Justin? So put your hands together for the panel and.